Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video with On Point Politics. And today we're going to be looking at my national average and seeing where the race stands as of right now. Make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And so I have essentially created my own moving average out of the current polling data that we have. But what I'm doing is I'm reweighing the numbers and I'm basically picking a target electorate. So kind of like how pollsters pick a target to weigh polls by, we essentially are picking a target to weigh all the national polling data that we get so that we can actually account for whatever polling error there possibly could be down the road. As you know, like for example, 538, the polling errors there have been pretty abysmal. I mean, they had Biden up 8 points in the popular vote, a little bit more than that, and he won it by half that margin. So their polling average is clearly not the best, and RCP was almost just as off. Now, RCP, from my understanding, tends to be a little bit more honest in terms of their aggregation, but what RCP isn't doing is weighing polls properly by party. That's like they're just not doing that because that they don't believe that that is a fundamental part of the process. But I think this is actually going to really help me eliminate any potential polling bias and could possibly make me the #1 polling aggregator in the entire industry. And if we look here, we are picking a tight electorate. Like even if we get like a R+1 electorate, which is possible, like if that were to happen, Trump's margin of victory actually like really increases. Like he'd be up in the popular vote by like way higher. Even if the electorate is like R+2, you would have like a crazy popular vote victory for him. He'd be up by like a little bit over 5 points if that happens. So for the sake of the aggregator, we are choosing to stick with a tight electorate unless there's a huge change. Like if there's another assassination attempt, I may boost the electorate by a point, or if like Trump has this really massive scandal, I may boost it down a point. Like something really big would have to happen for me to change this target. And to be honest with you, I actually think the electorate's probably going to be R+1 to 2, but I'm using a tight electorate because it's a little bit fair. And the electorate last cycle, I mean, here was only D+1, so I'm not even like reweighing the numbers that much. Really, I'm really not. And when you do that, you get a pretty big Trump popular vote win of about 3.2%. And we see here it's clearly evident over the course of about a 3-day span here, Trump has effectively lost about half a point here. And Harris has kind of gained half a point. And what's really going on is a lot of the polling data that we had kind of fell out of the average. There were a couple polls that fell out of the average that probably were a little bit more pro-Trump polling because of the fact that, in the beginning of the Trump-Harris race, he had way better polling numbers, and some of those figures are starting to fall out of the polling data. That's why you may see, numbers like this where, he's kind of going down. Now, I did remove some polls from the aggregate today because they expire today. So when I upload the average for tomorrow, you get the new numbers. And so far in the new average, Trump is up 47.5. So he gains like 0.1% in the aggregate, and Harris kind of gains a little bit like 0.15 in the aggregate. So she nets like a tiny little bit of a fraction, but the race basically still remains the same. Trump is still up by 3.2%. Kennedy goes down a tiny bit. The undecideds go down, and that's actually something important to point out. Undecideds have been going down in my average over the past couple days. So that is interesting. So it seems like Harris has netted a couple of points and has also netted some points from third-party candidates kind of falling in the average. So that seems to be the case, but Trump, kind of just rebounded to his August 24th numbers so far in the new average here. So Trump and Harris have both been gaining, and we may see a little bit of a weird cycle because the DNC just happened, so Harris is going to inevitably gain in the polling data. But at the same time, Trump got the Kennedy endorsement, which kind of sucks all of the energy out of the room and may possibly create a statistical wash. And I'm one of those people who believes that not all of Kennedy's support's going to go to Trump, maybe like 55% of it, but definitely not that much, to be honest with you. And so we clearly see Trump is still up in the popular vote by 3.2%. And he's doing fairly well. We are leaving Kennedy in the average because I actually want to see where his support goes over time. And so we can kind of track where it goes. So if somebody's like, oh, Harris actually gained from Kennedy, but we clearly see like if Trump goes up while Kennedy goes down, I can literally refute that and be like, no, that's not true. Trump's actually gained while Kennedy's gone down. And West and Stein are not even polling at a combined 1%. Undecideds are going down. So sort of people are kind of making up their minds, but this really isn't going to be that much of a game changer, really. I mean, the race is still Trump's right now, to be honest. I mean, if he's winning the national popular vote by that much, that's quite a big of a win. I mean, you're talking about Joe Biden, winning the popular vote last time by 4.5%, and Trump's up by 3.2%. That's like over a 7-point shift nationally. And so if that's the case, I mean, that basically puts, states like, Iowa and Ohio almost in the safe column, because if the nationwide popular vote is going to trend to the right and as well shift to the right, and Iowa and Ohio are going to trend to the right, they're probably going to be over 15-point wins. California would be safe still. Hawaii, more than likely. DC, Maryland, Massachusetts, Vermont, these would still be in the safe column. And maybe a state like New York possibly is still in the safe column very narrowly. Maybe Rhode Island is. That's one of the more Democrat, northeastern states. But that's about it. I mean, that's really it. And probably Florida right now, it's probably going to vote like 12 points to right of the nation. And so if that's the case, Trump probably does win that by over 15. I mean, Republicans had a, early primary, and their electorate was R plus 14. Now, is that going to translate to election day? No, my target of the electorate's actually like R plus 12 for Florida right now. And our moving average for Florida actually has the state at like, I think about a 13.5-point win for Trump. But that's, of course, including undecided. So that definitely wouldn't really help out Harris there. So I think he probably does win it by over 15 points. And we look at a state like Alaska, that would be safe as well for Trump. Texas, this one's interesting because it's a little ambiguous as to where it's really going to trend, because you have Hispanics moving to the right. You have the border, which is a really big issue, and that may push a state like Texas into the safe column depending on how hard it trends to the right. But my feeling is that, if you look here, the state voted to the right of the nation by about 10 points. And so if Trump wins the popular vote by 3, that's about a, roughly 13-point win. But we don't know where the state's going to trend. But my opinion is the state may actually trend back a point Republican. So you may see about a 14-point win in Texas for Trump. And I mean, Trump did beat Biden in primary turnout by quite a decent amount. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see something like that. Washington and Oregon will probably be in the higher, 10 to 15 range, probably 13 to 14-point wins for Harris. Colorado is in that like 9 to 11-point range. Illinois is like an 8 to 11-point victory for Harris. New Jersey, Delaware, Connecticut fall under that 15-point range, but possibly not below 10. New Jersey may be a surprise state that trends to the right. Kind of depends on the race. Now, Virginia is actually interesting. We'll get to that one in a second. Again, North Carolina voted for Trump by 1.3%, and the state really hasn't trended anywhere. It's been pretty stagnant. So if Trump's winning the popular vote by 3, he's probably on track to win North Carolina by possibly 7 to 9 points. And our moving average in North Carolina, funny enough, actually has a similar result. If we actually go to the moving average in a state like North Carolina right now, we'll actually see that Trump is up by about 6.8% in the state of North Carolina. So about a 7 to 9 point victory there. Georgia, right now our moving average has it at like about 5.8, but if even if the state trends 2 points to the left, which I don't really think that's going to happen, if it's voting 2 points to right of the nation and Trump's winning the popular vote by 3, plus 5 point popular vote victory in Georgia would basically ensue. So again, that's interesting. And Arizona, kind of the same thing. I mean, it probably does trend to the left as well, but it may still be a likely margin of victory for Trump because of Hispanics, because of the border, because of the fact that he's winning the popular vote by 3.2%. Nevada may be around a 7 to 8 point win for Trump in this case as well. And if you're looking at a state like Wisconsin, which is voting to the right of the nation by a pretty decent amount, actually by 3.8 percentage points, if the national popular vote's like a 3.2 percentage point win and the state continues to trend to the right, about a 7 point victory may be on the horizon for Trump in Wisconsin. Now, Iowa is very interesting because they actually just had a state fair that occurred, and they do political straw polls there, and they tend to be a pretty good gauger of where the races are. I mean, Trump in 2016 won the Iowa State Fair poll against Hillary Clinton by 11 points, and he won the state by 9. And some of the Senate races, some of the congressional races there, the state polls, or at least the state fair polls, although they are unscientific, tend to be a pretty accurate representation of where the electorate is at. And the results just came out of the Iowa State Fair of Trump versus Harris. And Trump is actually beating Harris here by 21 points in the state fair poll. And 2020, we never got to get one because, there was COVID. So we never really got to see the result of that. It would have been nice to see a little bit of a kind of interesting result. But Trump realistically does underperform it a bit. Again, it's an unscientific thing, but it kind of gives you a good idea of where the gauge is. So if we're assuming a 15 to 20 point win for Trump in Iowa, that means that Trump is winning the popular vote, because effectively Iowa and Ohio would probably be 15-point victories in a tied popular vote regardless. So if this is the case, then Trump is probably in fact winning the popular vote right now. I mean, if you would have looked at that Iowa poll, the state fair poll, you would have basically assumed that it would have been like a tied popular vote possibly, which is not that far off from Clinton +2. And again, it was a little bit earlier on during the cycle, and then you kind of had the whole Trump Hollywood tape, so that may have actually hurt him in Iowa there. So that's pretty fascinating to see that he was beating Hillary by 11. But either way, I just wanted to mention that because those who say, oh, Iowa's going to be like an 8-point victory, or for whatever reason, fucking 538 has Trump winning Iowa by less than what he had in 2020, it's just not going to happen. And the state's been trending to the right. There's no way that that's going to end up being the case. If we look at, for example, let's look at Pennsylvania. The state has been trending to the right as well. And so more than likely, in the scenario, it would probably be a likely margin of victory. Now, Michigan is the only one that's a little bit iffy because it's voting to the right of the nation by 1.7 percentage points. So maybe it's like teetering on the line of likely to lean. I'd probably put it in the lean column for now, but that's probably a fair categorization of where it could be. And now we're kind of looking at these Biden +6 states or more from 2020, those being New Mexico, Minnesota, Virginia, New Hampshire, and Maine at large. If Trump's winning the popular vote by 3.2 and, New Mexico's voting 6.8% to the left of the nation, it's a little interesting because we clearly see it here, voting to the left by 6.3%. So if Trump's winning the popular vote by 3.2, it's about only a 3-point victory in New Mexico. But if the state is trending to the right, which I suspect it will due to the border and Hispanics, that puts New Mexico in a really weird spot, because that basically makes it way more competitive than what people are talking about. And what's quite interesting is that if you actually look at my moving average for New Mexico, it's actually within a single percentage point right now. Again, we have very limited data because not a lot of people have been polling in the state, really. But we do see that Trump is, in fact, really close to winning there, and undecideds have dropped massively over the past couple of days, and all the third party candidates are effectively at 0% right now, and third parties will probably hurt Harris even more. So that really puts a question mark on the state. But I'd say right now it's probably a lean margin. You have, the Albuquerque area is kind of pushing, the state to the left. So that might be the reason why I'll have it in the lean column. But it realistically could be a tilt Democrat or even tilt Republican state for that matter. It is very possible for that to actually be the case. Now, Virginia, this one's interesting because it's been moving to the left, but Glenn Youngkin became the governor in 2021. He's kind of terraformed the state. He has a 60% approval rating there, and he's fairly conservative, actually. So I'm kind of surprised he even has that approval rating there. And the polling data, which usually is, about 1 to 2 points off, has Harris, within a margin of error, essentially, about a 3-point win. And when we look at our average for Virginia, we actually have the race very close there. Both candidates did gain in the past, day or so. But, Harris and Trump are neck and neck in the state. She's literally up by half a point. So I'd say maybe it's actually going to be fairly competitive. I'd probably give it to Harris right now because of that Nova area, but Trump may possibly be doing far better in Virginia than people are actually expecting right now. Now, Minnesota, I think, is going to continue to trend to the left. This is the state where Harris is doing the best in the average. She actually gained in the last couple of days. She's polling at 46.8. Trump is at 42.1, so she's leading the average by 4.7, and no undecided voters practically went to Harris. It's a lot of Kennedy support that actually kind of went to Harris, looking at the average here. So I'd say it probably does go in the lean column for Harris. That, liberal, Minneapolis area is probably going to really help her out in the state there. Nebraska's second. It did vote to the left of the nation by 2.2%. So, and I feel like when you redraw that district for Republicans, it probably will trend a point back to the right. So if Trump's winning the popular vote by 3.2%, that is probably going to be a lean Republican margin right now. And looking at New Hampshire, this is also going to be fairly interesting because our moving average actually has Trump up in New Hampshire, and we even had to get rid of a poll because it fell out of the average, and Trump is actually up by quite a bit right now. For whatever reason, the third-party candidates gained while Kennedy fell, which is really weird. But yeah, so Trump's actually up in our average in New Hampshire, and what's quite funny is that we're literally being as fair as possible and actually cutting the electorate lead for Republicans here by half. And even when you do that, Harris is still down in New Hampshire. So, and the state's very anti-incumbent, it's very anti-war. So I may give it to Trump right now. I'd say maybe Trump is favored in New Hampshire. You did have a poll right after the dropout, before all this response bias came into the polling data, that Trump was up in New Hampshire by about a point with similar vote shares as to what I have right now. And Kennedy was even polling in the teens, and I have Kennedy at 12%. Maybe Kennedy's support here was just so high with the previous aggregate that maybe he just would have taken away a bunch of support from Harris, and you would have seen like a 9-point victory in the state of New Hampshire for Trump, which would have been really fascinating there. Now, Maine at large is interesting because we do see right now Harris did really gain. We had to drop a poll out of the aggregate. There was 2 polls out of University of New Hampshire Survey Center, but we had to remove it because it basically expired pretty much today. And now we see Harris did pick up some steam there, and will probably stay there until they update the polling data. But Harris is only up by a little bit less than 3. So I'd say maybe Harris does get it right now. It's been trending to the left. It's a pretty interesting state. And with ranked choice voting, maybe Harris is favored in this state. And so right now, guys, the race is Trump's to win. He's at 317. He's winning, all the swing states besides Michigan and New Hampshire by, double-digit margins. Not double digits, but, mid to, high single-digit margins, which is very fascinating because Trump really, won these states not by a lot in 2016 or really struggled in them. And it kind of shows that Harris is really not the one really winning right now. It's just not true, guys. If we average out all the polls that have D plus 11, D plus 7, D plus 6 electorates, which make no sense, Even the electorate in 2008 was not that blue, by the way. The electorate in 2008 was like D plus 3 or 4. Like, it's never been that blue in the 21st century. It wouldn't make sense for that to be the case. So now you have Trump up by 3.3% in the popular vote, essentially, and Kennedy's endorsement may play a big factor into this. And if he gets the lion's share of Kennedy's support, Trump may be polling at over 50%, and this race may be a way bigger victory for him than most political pundits are, forecasting out there. And for, all of those you who look at 538 or RCP as an honest, data source, I'd say 538 is kind of being really shady, because if we go to 538, I mean, they're letting in anybody into the average. And, obviously SoCal Strategies, which is the pollster I use, is not a nobody pollster, but like, you're talking about Harris having a 3.6 percentage point lead? Like, really? And they completely just removed Kennedy out of the average? Like, they shouldn't have done that. They should have seen where his support would have gone, because it would have been nice to be able to track that. And we're going to be the only, aggregator that actually tracks this in real time to see where his support goes to, so we can back people's arguments. And they want to reference our, basically our aggregate. And if for whatever reason we end up getting this race right in terms of averaging out all the polling data, and Kennedy's support goes to Trump, will be a lot more credible, because we would have been able to see, okay, Kennedy's support went to Trump, and you can make a valid case, okay, Kennedy basically gave Trump a landslide victory. I mean, it's very possible that that could be the case, because if he's already leading by 3 and, Trump gets 3%, that's going to put Trump at above 50. And at that point, it would practically be impossible for Harris to win the Electoral College. And what I think is kind of interesting about 538 as well is kind of really annoying me, because you have their new model, which took them about a month to complete. They have 1,000 simulations, and I want you guys to see something, because I don't know what they're doing to run these simulations. I don't know what in the world they're doing to run these, but Harris winning 527 electoral votes is not going to happen. There's no real scenario in the whole wide world that Harris wins all the states in the United States except Alabama, or only a few, or wins most of the states in the country. Same goes for Trump. Trump is not going to get over 400 electoral college votes. You could make a realistic argument for him to get 347. Like, this is actually within realm of possibility, especially with him leading by 3 in the popular vote. But for him to even be getting over 373 or like 3, that's a little bit of a stretch now. I'd say that Trump's ceiling was 361, which was basically Minnesota, New Mexico, New Hampshire, Maine, Virginia, and New Jersey in his column. Like, that was basically his ceiling. Like, Trump pretty much almost hit his ceiling with Biden on the top of the ticket, pretty much. That's really what you saw. But right now, Trump is really going out here and just completely, like, blowing out Harris in the swing states. Like, realistically, this is not a close race, because in the places where it matters, he's killing her in the places where the race matters, or at least really decides the winner. He's blowing her out by quite a bit in the states. And you're talking about a model that has Harris getting even over like 330. Like, her best case scenario is the 306 map and winning North Carolina. I mean, that's about it. That's the most she could do in an even realistic scenario. There's no way she's getting over 320 electoral votes. Like, it's just not happening. And if you look at their modeling, I mean, their popular vote margin, they have Harris winning the popular vote by 4 points. That makes no sense. Trump is not going to get 45%. He's never even gotten below 46% in the national popular vote. Like, that just doesn't work. That doesn't make any sense. You're talking about, if you look at their state margins, they have North Carolina voting to the left of Georgia, And their tilt margins, even in a best case scenario for Harris right now, yeah, she could win North Carolina, but she probably wouldn't even get within 2 or 3 points of North Carolina. And so apparently Pennsylvania is going to be the same margin for Harris as it was for Biden, but somehow Wisconsin's going to be bluer, but Michigan stays the same. But Florida's going to be a 4-point victory, and Trump only improves in Texas by 0.1%. But Trump does better in New Hampshire, but does worse in Minnesota, but actually does slightly better in Ohio, in Iowa, but is winning Maine by less than 2020 and Virginia, but the New Mexico margin stays the same, but somehow he's doing 0.1% better there. He's improving in Colorado and Oregon, but not in Wisconsin. Kansas is the same margin as last time. Like, this doesn't make any sense. This makes no sense at all. These state margins are ridiculous. Utah, R plus 21. Really? Trump won the state by about 20. And if the state popular vote or the national popular vote is going to move to the right by quite a bit, it is not going to be a 20-point victory. It's not going to be. So this model makes no sense at all. Literally makes 0 sense at all. I don't understand this whatsoever. So apparently Harris is going to hold on to Biden's margins in Maryland. Like, this makes no sense. Like, what simulations are they even running here? Like, Trump realistically has like a 5% chance to win Massachusetts, not like a 1% chance. Like, he technically has multiple paths, because if he's getting like 30% of the black vote, which there's a non-zero chance of that, I mean, he's definitely got more paths to winning Massachusetts than this. Like, I don't understand what modelings they're doing here. And let's say, okay, maybe that is a little bit of a hot take. Let's go to Florida. So you're telling me that Harris has the opportunity to win Florida by 28 points? Are you kidding me? And Trump winning Florida by this much that I'm showing you is more realistic than Harris even winning it by this much. Like, there is no universe where Harris even wins Florida by even more than 3 points. Like, I don't understand what they're doing with this model. I really don't understand. Like, I really don't get it. I really don't understand what is going into their model, what simulations are happening. So they're getting the polling average, and then they adjust the polling average. Like, I don't understand. And effects of party conventions. Why are you basing your party average movements off of conventions? And you're forecasting what you think the aggregate's gonna be on election day, and you're modeling with a fundamentals forecast. Like, what is your fundamentals? Like, what does that mean? Like, I don't understand what that means. And then you average out the fundamentals model and your polling average, even though you guys should know that your polling averages are always off by like 5 to 10 points in every state. Like, this literally makes no sense. Like, this doesn't make any sense. This model makes absolutely 0 sense. I guarantee you guys that my model, my aggregator of polls, which I'm not going off of some fundamentals or whatever model, I'm actually getting the polls, and I'm basically applying a target electorate, which I think is fair, and weighing all of the polling numbers, so we eliminate the polling bias from the averages, and you get something that I think is pretty realistic. Like, I don't understand what these people at 538 are doing. I really don't understand. But guys, if you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And I will see you guys in the next video.